Call the meeting of County Council to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming, and we apologize for being a few minutes late. Optional prayer, Mrs. Lowell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let us pray. At this meeting, we are not a single member, but part of all. On this day, we share not just one idea, but many. People in life from every time and every part of our county. On this day, we gather here to govern as one voice. Lord, it is not always easy to live in a community. Let us not walk away from neighbors in need or be wrapped up in our own concerns. Let us hear the cry of the needy, and let us not fail to hear the burdens of others who long for some support. We ask this in the name of our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mrs. Fatika?
Here.
Mr. Horton?
Here.
Mr. Leone?
Here.
Mrs. Law?
Here.
Mr. Rastetter?
Here.
Dr. Faust?
Here, hearing the public, anybody who called in ahead of time will have 5 minutes to speak on their topic that they choose. Anybody thereafter will have 3. First on the list is Jason Brendel. If you just give your name and the municipality in which you live, and then we'll get you started. Thank you.
Jason Brindle, 4131 McClellan Avenue. Municipality is the city of Erie. I have some documents to hand out, if I could.
You can give them to our clerk and he'll get them to us.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Erie County Council, Dahlkemper Administration, and fellow Erie County citizens. Thank you for allowing me to have my voice be heard with these 5 minutes. As a citizen, I formally request and advise that Erie County Recycling put a cease on those ads on your smartphone. The former public holder should not be paid for services when that service is not required or requested. A more appropriate background vocals would be appropriate from the administration or Erie County Recycling. As you are aware, there was a resolution that the Erie City Council passed to have the City of Erie LGBT Council to organize the ban on conversion therapy in the City of Erie. Under the leadership of the Schumber administration, Erie City Council and the community came together for the LGBT youth of the City of Erie. This is one small step in our transformation. The Human Rights Campaign Municipal Quality Index was presented to you this year, as I came in 2008 to County Council to be proactive and be a citizen. 2014, 2016, 2017 was handed to you. A simple reminder, Erie was lowest. Today, I am here to report we are halfway to 100 with the 2018 index. Like I mentioned before, we worked very well with the administration, council, and the community to raise our index score 13 points up, 50 out of 100. Attached to the handout is the first page of a 9-page final report on the LGBT inclusion for families, community, and the economy. On the 2018 index, please pay close attention to the highlighted spot. This one goes to the administration and the solicitor. Erie County Councilman Andre Horton will be pleased to note that this is an indicator for community benefit agreements underneath the municipality as an employer. A city contract non-discrimination ordinance is a tongue-in-cheek way of saying a new LERTA in the county or a new LERTA in the city or that big white elephant in the room. The LGBT community is considered a minority community, and that report in this index supported. The 16501 zip code with a possible new LERTA will not be the poorest in the Commonwealth anymore. When I presented the past index to our own HRC, I mentioned how Land Illegal told me our Human Rights Commission ordinance has a bark but still no bite in several areas. But on this index, it deals with public accommodation. Unless the Pennsylvania Fairness Act gets passed in Harrisburg, the county will still have a 2 out of 5. The numbers represent those citizens leaving Erie County. If we work together, we can bend our population decline to bend it upwards with inclusion for all citizens. This is another feather in our cap as we transform our region into a thriving county for the LGBT community and our allies to work, to pray, to live, to learn, and to love. We the people just cannot celebrate just yet. Let's keep working together and not leave any citizens out of the process. Like I said before, what we missed or missing represent citizens leaving Erie. We truly need to reflect a diverse, inclusive, transparent, and civil community where all walks of life can thrive. Last note. Thank you, Erie County Executive Kathy Dahlkemper, for the new EMTA Board of Directors. As a member of the Standing Citizens Advisory Committee, our next meeting is October 25th at 10 a.m. on the second floor of the Intermodal Transportation Center on the Bayfront Highway. It's open to the public, and let's work together for the EMTA. And I would love to have Erie County Council please host these meetings with the EMTA for the citizens. And I wish that we could be more proactive to allow everyone to be part of the process with EMTA moving forward as we are transitioning into this new board. Thank you. And remember, get out the vote on November 6th.
Thank you, Jason. Next is Randy Barnes.
Good evening. My name is Randy Barnes. I reside in Harborkirk in Dr. Faust District, and I'm here to talk a little bit more about the ECRA gaming spending. And I know it's been kind of in the media as kind of minor expenses. This you could almost call it petty, but I guess I'd refer to it as petty theft. Petty theft. You know, we talked about the expenses last week. Let me just read from one Visa statement. Get-Go, $3.49. Get-Go, $3.49. Get-Go, $3.49. Now, we want to be told by, well, I might as well say it, read from the paper. Quote, Faust said ECRA has never improperly dispensed any grants at council members requesting minor expenses like buying coffee, creamer, and water. Let me ask this. We go buy creamer for what? Do we need sugar? Who's paying for the sugar? Do we need coffee? Who's paying for the coffee? Now, who's paying for the coffee pot? Who's paying for the styrofoam cups? But that's just minor. That's just petty. If 300 county employees come in tomorrow with a receipt for $3.49 from Get-Go and they say, we were having a meeting, will Mr. Sparber agree to pay that? I mean, what's good for it's county tax money. The money flows through this building. I don't care if it flows through what's that called, Knowledge Park for $1,300, $1,386 a month we have to pay to have an office in Knowledge Park so we can give away $4 million a year? $1,300. I want to call, I wish he was here tonight, from the Martin Luther King Center and ask him, could you use $1,300 tomorrow? Is there anything at all that you could use $1,300 for? Because we can't give it to you because we're paying rent this month at Knowledge Park. But you know, I saw in the paper the other day that nobody can believe they can spend $35,000 on food. Let me just read from 1 month. Chopsticks meeting, $27. Wegmans meeting, $77. Wegmans meeting, $62. That's the Get-Go again. Yeah, we know that's just coffee creamer. Amazon office supplies, $29. Cold Rock water. Well, we know we got to bring in water because we can't drink city water in Knowledge Park. I mean, you people down here on the lower part of the hill, you drink that stuff, but we're up in Knowledge Park. We get Cold Rock water. We get delivered. We don't even have to go to Walmart to get it. Chipotle, $37. And this is all the same month. Chipotle, $37. Walmart Supercenter, office supplies again, office supplies, Walmart Supercenter, office supplies, $34, Walmart Supercenter. Sabella's Catering, $538, meeting, must have been food, right? I mean, that's what they do, food. That's just 1 month. But then, you know what, was so ironic, because I'm reading in the paper how this whole tuition thing was resolved. Everybody's cool with that. Yeah, it was resolved all right. And again, Solicitor Tallarico could tell me whether this is really theft by deception. 1 month, we get a bill, tuition reimbursement, $5,604. So I read in the paper, oh, that's been taken care of. We aren't doing tuition reimbursement anymore, right? So the very next month, we get something called a check written out for $5,527 for something called personal development. That is theft by deception. All 7 of you, including you, Kathy, I know you're not here, but I'm pointing to all 7 of you, are part of the scheme. There is so much of this money has been floating out in the community, no one wants to open their mouth. Do you think the Manufacturers Association that gets $20,000 a year for Roar on the Shore is going to say anything because the Martin Luther King Center or the JFK Center doesn't get any money? Do you think they care? They got 20 grand last year to put on the Roar on the Shore. If you're the $20,000 away from a break even on an event like that, you have no business putting it on. $20,000 last year, $20,000 this year, $40,000 to put on an event that these motorcycles are. It's out of control. It's out of control. And you know who has the control? The 7 of you. You have the control. And don't tell me you don't, because if you don't, then nobody does, right? It's taxpayers' money, isn't it? And if you're okay with petty theft, then you probably do the same thing. Because I found that people that are thieves are okay with other people that are thieves.
Randy, thank you. Your time has expired.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the public wish to be heard tonight? Seeing no one come forward, do I have a motion to approve the October 2nd regular meeting minutes? Moved by Mr. Leone and seconded by Mr. Horton. Is there any corrections or comments regarding those minutes? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On the minutes, Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes, reports of county officials, the county executive or her designee. Thank you, Mr. Sparber. Finance Committee, I believe we are deferring to Mrs. Lowell tonight.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last Thursday, we had a finance meeting and decided to put on the agenda ordinances actually 129, 130, and 131, and 132, and resolution 51, 52, and possible sale of parcels for G&H. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Lowell regarding finance? Personnel Committee, Mr. Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Personnel Committee met on Thursday, October 11th. We didn't have any business to put on tonight's agenda, either old or new. That concludes my.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. In my haste, I should say, in caucus, I didn't ask members of council if they had any reports tonight. Does anybody wish to make a report? Mr. Horton?
Yes, I just, as the election board chairman, I just would like to remind everyone that November 6th is coming, looming large. Anyone throughout that you have a sphere of influence over, please admonish them to get out and vote on November 6th. Thank you. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Anybody else? We have no old business tonight, so moving on to new business.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Leone.
I'd like to make second reading of ordinance number 130, 131, and 132.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Leone and seconded by Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion regarding amending tonight's agenda in that manner? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On the motion, Mrs. Fatika,
Yes.
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Faust?
Yes. First reading of ordinance number 129, please, in title only.
A first reading of ordinance number 129, 2018, 50th 2018 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $256,748 for purchase of Infocon server and software updates through sole vendor contract.
A second reading of ordinance number 130, please, in title only.
Second reading of ordinance number 130, 2018, 51st 2018 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $1,793 for PCOMP Safety Improvement Grant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Horton and seconded by Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On ordinance 131, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 131, please, in title only.
a second reading of ordinance number 131, 2018, 52nd 2018 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $3,369 for PCOMP Safety Improvement Grant.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Horton. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Lull. Any discussion? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
An ordinance 131, Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson. I'm sorry, Mr. Anderson.
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 132, please, in title only.
a second reading of ordinance number 132, 2018, 8th 2018 Public Health Fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $12,238 for Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Lull and seconded by Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On ordinance 132, Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Resolution number 51, please, in title only.
Resolution number 51, 2018, Erie County General Authority, not to exceed $4,380,000, tax exempt note, Young Men's Christian Association of Erie, Pennsylvania project.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mrs. Lull and seconded by Mr. Anderson. Is there any discussion? Roll call, please, Mr. Smith.
On Resolution 51, Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Resolution number 52, please, in title only.
Resolution number 52, 2018, in support of a national tolling of the bells to honor those who served in the Great War.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mr. Anderson and seconded by Mr. Leone. Is there any discussion? Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to read the resolution in its entirety. I just want to mention that we're placing this as a resolution. Council has done a proclamation which will be read on November 10th. We are joining in with Governor Wolf, County Executive Dahlkamper, Mayor Schember, and the Erie City Council, who I believe is going to vote on their resolution tomorrow, to present proclamations on the 100th anniversary of the signing of the armistice ending World War I, the war to end all wars. On November 11th, the 11th month, at the 11th hour, we're asking that all bells be tolled across Erie County, as they will be across the state of Pennsylvania. But I just wanted to mention that in every effort that's brought forward, there's always one individual who really spearheads that. And I just want to publicly recognize Mary Jane Koenig, who without her efforts in rallying the community, this event, certainly this worldwide event in history, may have been forgotten. And so for that, we want to thank her for her efforts. And she joins in with many veterans from the American Legion and VFW organizations, as well as many citizens in this community whose fathers, grandfathers, aunts, uncles, mothers, and grandmothers served. And we owe them a debt of gratitude. And for that, I'm honored to place this resolution forward tonight, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? I will just echo what you said about Mary Jane Koenig. I've known her for quite some time. I'm glad she's part of this effort, and I congratulate Mr. Anderson for bringing this resolution forward. My grandfather fought in the Argonne Forest in World War I, and it's something that is special in our family to remember. And I would hope any bell in Erie County would ring on the 11th day at the 11th hour of the 11th month.
Mr. Chairman, I just hope when they were talking about grandfathers, they weren't talking about me in the first.
Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On Resolution 52, Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Do I have a motion to add the appointment of William Conway on the agenda to be appointed to the Erie County Library Advisory Board?
Mr. Chairman, could I make a motion to add items I, J, K, L, and M to amend the agenda to include all of those
Sure.
items tonight?
And J is the Library Board appointment of William Conway?
No,
I'm sorry,
I is the library appointment of William Conway. J would be the amendment of Resolution 133. K would be the amendment of Resolution 134. L would be the ratification of the contracts with Saks. And M will be the settlement with Joseph Agulia.
Okay, well, we can explain those further as we go along, okay? All right, there is a motion to amend tonight's
second.
agenda to add those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items, seconded by Mr. Leon. Any discussion regarding the amendment of tonight's agenda? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On the motion, Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes, and my mind's all over the place. Could we first, do we have a motion to approve the sale? If we could, take
So
items G and
moved.
H together.
Both parcels.
The sale of those parcels
I'll
according to the
second that.
index number is moved by Mr. Leon and seconded by Mrs. Lull. Any discussion regarding the sale of those two properties? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
on the sale of parcels, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve William Conway to the Erie County Library Advisory Board?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Anderson.
Second.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Leon. Is there any discussion regarding that appointment?
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Anderson.
I just want to mention that Bill Conway, William Conway, has been a lifelong resident of this community. He's been very active in youth sports organizations, as well as with school PTAs and with volunteering at the library. He has a love of reading and of libraries, and will make an excellent addition to their board. As a purchasing agent, I think he brings a lot of experience as well, and I'm honored to put his name forward tonight, and certainly appreciate the support of my colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On the appointment of Mr. Conway, Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes?
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Do I have a motion to appoint Susquehanna Accounting and Consulting Solutions to provide financial and accounting professional services to Erie County Council?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Mrs. Lawland, seconded by Mr. Horton. Is there any discussion? Matt, all this stuff, you're welcome to copies of as we go along. I know you probably don't have it. But as all of us know, we unfortunately had to accept the resignation of our longtime accountant and CPA, Mr. Maloney, in January. We've had a tough time filling those shoes. We did do our best to try to find a local firm, anybody, to provide these services. We were unsuccessful in doing that. About a month or so ago, 2 months ago, we placed an ad in some sort of a professional accounting journal anyway. We did get one note of interest of that. It was a local gentleman who we interviewed, and in the end, his work schedule just would not allow him to get to the council meetings and provide the type of advice that we would have had hoped. In the interim, however, this particular outfit, through their past experience with the county and the auditing procedures, had started a discussion. I think that started with the administration, and they were referred down to us anyway, and we were familiar with their services. Myself, Mrs. Fatika, I believe, Mr. Maloney and Doug Smith met with them a few weeks ago. I think in the end, we're going to get just as good a service as far as professional advice. They will not be at the table quite as often as Joe was, but certainly during budget time, we made it a point to let them know that we really do want somebody in town at that time, and they'll provide essentially the same type of services that Joe did in the past, and they'll do their best to get here. Otherwise, mainly, the reason they don't want to be here every time is they don't want to add the additional expense of the travel, et cetera. So we didn't have too many good options to fill Joe's shoes, but I think in the end, we're getting a really solid outfit, and I would recommend that we approve the appointment of Sachs for our financial and accounting advisor.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Anderson.
First of all, I just want to thank you and Kathy Fatika and Doug Smith and the administration for all the work that you guys have put forward. We knew when Joe had retired that it was going to be impossible, if not nearly impossible, to fill his shoes. You guys have done a yeoman's job in putting this project as a priority and seeking out experts in the community to do that. I will say I'm disappointed that nobody locally has stepped forward to want to partake in these services, and would hope that at some point in the future, local people realize that it is an honor to serve here as our advisor on council. I will support this effort tonight because I do believe that this firm, as you had said, has the expertise that we're looking for in the light that no one else has stepped forward. But again, it's my hope that we will be able to have somebody local in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Lowe.
Yeah, I would like to make it clear on my understanding that we are going to start them immediately, and then there'll be a year contract.
Not really a contract. Their services will be secured for a year
For a
because
year.
that's just an ongoing thing, right?
Okay, thank you.
It's always renewed every year or not renewed every year based on.
But they will be
professionals.
starting immediately.
Correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Mr. Smith, roll call on the motion to secure Sachs Financial Accounting and Consulting Solutions.
Mrs. Law,
Yes.
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes, okay, and also so we can vote tonight on ordinances number 133 and 134, do I have a motion to make second readings of those two ordinances?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Anderson.
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Leone. Is there any discussion regarding the further amendment of tonight's agenda? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On the motion, Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
yes,
Dr. Faust,
Yes. These two particular ordinances, we are going to extend the life, so to speak, of the current Human Relations Commission through November 12th. We don't have a new director on board just yet, and the office, those particular positions that we have in the budget right now are set to expire the
22nd.
22nd. So to allow us enough time to get that director on board, we want to make sure that the office currently functions as it is, and that's all we are doing with these ordinances tonight. So with that, a second reading, of ordinance number 133.
A second reading of ordinance number 133, 2018. Ordinance 133 is amending the effective date of ordinance 119, 2018, which amended the effective date of ordinance 115, 2018. 42nd, 2018 general fund budget, supplemental appropriation and elimination of 3 positions for the reorganization of the Human Relations Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Anderson and seconded by Mr. Leone. Is there any discussion regarding ordinance number 133? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On ordinance 133, Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
yes,
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Second reading of ordinance number 134, please, in title only.
A second reading of ordinance number 134, 2018. Ordinance 134, amending the effective date of ordinance 12018, which amended the effective date of ordinance 116, 2018. 43rd general fund budget, supplemental appropriation of $44,006, creation of 2 positions for reorganization of the Human Relations Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Anderson and seconded by Mr. Leone. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say that,
Mr.
that's a lot to say there, Doug, and we appreciate you
I didn't do it very well, Mr.
clarifying all of
Anderson.
that for us, so thank you.
Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On ordinance 134, Mrs. Fatika,
yes,
Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
yes,
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Dr. Faust,
Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the settlement agreement between Erie County and Joe Agula?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Horton,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Anderson. Is there any further discussion? Tom, do you want to give any kind of overview, because you are our point person for negotiating it? In some, it gives a severance, for lack of a better word, of $12,000, which is roughly $1,000 for each year of service. He asked for a thank you letter of his employment here at Erie County, and it releases us from any further claims or concerns regarding Mr. Agula. I don't know if we need any more explanation than that.
No, that's pretty much it. If you look at the terms of the agreement, there's a complete release of Erie County and county council from any kind of claim that Mr. Rulli may make against the county in the future. So in exchange of that, the council is going to be paying $12,000.
Any further discussion? Mr. Smith, roll call, please.
On the motion, Mr. Horton,
Yes.
Mr. Leone,
Yes.
Mrs. Law,
yes,
Mr. Rastetter,
Yes.
Mr. Anderson,
Yes.
Mrs. Fatika,
yes.
Dr. Faust.
Yes. We have a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Council stands adjourned. Thank you, everybody.